Is it possible that the inscriptions on the Rosetta Stone were misinterpreted and the Egyptian hieroglyphics have an entirely different meaning? Certainly, somebody somewhere along the line could have made the parallel texts as a fabrication, taking a body of hieroglyphics, arbitrarily assigning sound or word values to them, and using those to transliterate the readable Greek. If the text of the Rosetta Stone were a modern mapping of characters between languages made without any knowledge of ancient Egyptian language, we'd expect the results of using that mapping to produce gibberish when we tried to use it to translate other texts. The story of decipherment really began with the invasion of Egypt by Napoleon in July 1798. Along with his military force of some 38,000 troops, there were also more than 150 civilian savants, including astronomers, engineers, linguists, poets, artists, musicians, and mathematicians. Champollion was presented to Napoleon, who pledged support for his Coptic dictionary and grammar. The problem was that 486 words of Greek on the Rosetta Stone were paralleled by 1,419 hieroglyphic signs. Even if one took significant groups of hieroglyphs together, this produced 180 significant sign clusters. On the face of it, therefore, the hieroglyphs were neither pictograms nor a phonetic system. Champollion guessed they might be some complex combination of both and labored away for years for the breakthrough. The hieroglyphs, it turned out, had a fourfold function. Some signs were pictograms denoting concrete objects, others ideograms denoting abstracts, others again were used phonetically, while a final group acted as derivative signs which alter the otherwise fixed meaning of a cluster of hieroglyphs. In a word, the battling hieroglyphs were a script that was simultaneously figurative, symbolic and phonetic. Although the French savants copied thousands of hieroglyphs and bas-reliefs faithfully by hand for publication in the Description de l'Egypte, copying the Rosetta Stone slide incisions by hand proved difficult. The director of the Institute's printing house suggested that the stone itself be used as a printing block. The surface was washed, brushed and dried, with all of the incisions left moist so that they would not take up any ink that was applied to the surface. The dampened sheet of paper was pressed onto the stone in contact with the raised surface and, in the kind of lithographic printing process, the reverse image of the writing was successfully produced with white letters on a black background. When the printing press first appeared on the scene, it opened up a new medium in the form relief prints. The artist could carve an image onto wooden or metal blocks, think the block and impress it on paper. Relief printing created the first form for reproducible art. The printmaker copies the source drawing onto a flattened stone block. He or she carefully chips away the unnecessary stone, leaving a raised surface upon which colored inks are rolled. The printmaker creates not more than 50 prints from a stone block. What Bonaparte needed, in addition to intensifying his manipulation of the domestic press, was a propaganda tool to counteract the opposition of the right-wing press. Newspapers, specifically newspapers which the general could dominate and in whose columns he and his supporters could directly address the issues raised by his political opponents. In France, Napoleon forged this tool by establishing or achieving control of 6 newspapers: the Journal du General Bonaparte et des Hommes Vertueux, the Courrier de l'Armée d'Italie, and La France Vue de l'Armée d'Italie, in 1797, and the Journal de Malta, the Courrier de l'Egypte, and La Decade Egyptian in 1798. This propaganda tended to be strongly Republican and that it served as a means of preparing its audience, not only for the demands of the campaign, but also for Bonaparte's political future. The conquest of Egypt by France should not only be useful to politics and commerce, it is necessary that the sciences and the arts profit as well. It is a testament to the importance of Bonaparte's Egyptian newspapers that their publication continued in his absence and helped to maintain the Army of the Orient as a viable military force. Napoleon's expedition to Egypt set off an obsession with Egyptian antiquities amid the wealthier populations in Europe and the United States. 19th-century fraudsters responsible for faking artifacts had access to such authentic materials due to what some refer to as the era's mummy mania. Scientists at the Vatican Museum's Diagnostic Laboratory for Conservation and Restoration analyzed 2 mummy forgeries for a year, and say they found out the techniques charlatans used to pass them off as real. These mummies are important evidence of the phenomenon of falsification that managed to regularly fool collectors and sometimes scholars. Forgeries of Egyptian antiquities often deceive individuals who don't know what to look for, simply because eager buyers haven't been properly educated. Fake ancient Egyptian statues, figurines and reliefs have flooded the market as a result. Fake artifacts have a long history around the world, as even the Romans were copying original Greek sculptures, and chances are the pot or statuette you find in a small town in a foreign country was produced for the tourist market. Some countries have laws that mandate sellers specifically mention when something is a replica, but these laws are not always followed. The surface of an object often gives an indication of how it was made. The researcher can relate this information to when and where an artifact was made, because the technical processes available to various civilizations throughout history are well documented. With good etching technique and a protective sealant, you are assured that the text or image engraved will remain sharp and clear for years and even decades, as long as the stone surface remains in good condition. However, if the etching is done on cheap stone or granite, the stone's components may start wearing down over time, taking the etching along with it. Experts will, therefore, recommend choosing high-quality stones, such as granite with fine grains with specks of white or gold, to ensure the longevity of the etching. Granite is a very hard stone and resistant to damage. Though the composition of various granite colors and varieties will vary from slab to slab, granite is generally made out of a quartz, feldspar and an assorted variety of minerals, evoking a gritty look. However, granite is still vulnerable to staining. Granite has a Mohs hardness rating of 7. In an arid, temperate climate, mechanical weathering in the form of abrasion from wind-blown sand might be more prevalent than in a humid, temperate climate. This would lead to more mechanical weathering of the granite. Granite might withstand the ravages of chemical weathering, because it is rich in more stable minerals like quartz and orthoclase of potassium-rich feldspar. However, physical weathering can hit them hard. Granite can be susceptible to chemical weathering when it contacts with hydrothermal, and it causes hydrothermal alteration on granite. Hydrothermal alteration is a chemical replacement of the original minerals in a rock by new minerals, where a hydrothermal fluid delivers the chemical reactants and removes the aqueous reaction products. Because hydration is the main chemical process breaking granite down, it follows that water plays a big role. It turns out that granite weathers best in the subsurface where soil moisture is in constant contact with bedrock granite. One often finds in desert regions piles of rounded boulders sitting in random piles on the landscape. Below surface, the granite's joints and edges more surface area are chemically attacked and the result following exhumation is a pile of random boulders. Only since the 19th century, as carving techniques have improved, has granite become a usable material for tombstones. But granite, too, starts to look old after a few hundred years. Lettering loses its crispness, luster fades, edges and details melt into rounder, simpler shapes. Rain and wind slowly erode its surface. Freeze-thaw cycles in the winter expand and contract the rock, pushing and pulling its atoms ever so slightly. Many museums, especially older ones, have obtained forgeries in the course of building their collections, and this brings to the fore the interesting issue of why forgeries were accepted by art historians at the time of acquisition. Recognizing contemporary forgeries, of course, often requires the passage of time, and, as a result, a portion of the museum's storage can end up being devoted to fakes. In most cases, curators are aware of the forgeries in their collections,